Thanks a lot, Jake, for that great introduction. This is Mike Brookman with Radan, and today you guys are in a webinar to learn how to make things work more smoothly. We're going to start slow, though. We're going to just reintroduce the basics, kind of get an idea of where Radan normally is controlled and managed, with bringing in some part files, talking about the differences between Radan part files and DXFs. From there, we're going to go a little bit more advanced and bring in a 3D model and showcase how we can unfold an entire assembly right into a Radan project. From there, we're stepping away from Radan, talking a little bit about MRP Essentials, a plugin that we have that is a great way to do a massive import, especially if you're using any type of delimited file. That's kind of what gets you into that. We're also then going to talk a little bit about the differences between traditional nesting and our ultimate nester. And finally, shop data. Another little add-on kind of correlates with MRP Essentials and kind of brings that connectivity all together from in the shop and in the office. So grab a drink, let's sit back and enjoy the show. Did you guys catch that wink? Yeah, I know a little bit of a jokester move, but I really want this to be kind of light. There's going to be a lot of information that we're going to go through, and we're going to start simple and we're going to move to some more advanced things. So in the beginning, it may seem like, this is how we do it every day. It's not teaching us anything, but stick around. It'll get better. With that being said, I'm going to tuck away and we're definitely diving in. All right, now that we have Radan running, we're in a project, and now we need to get some parts. There's two icons here. The first one opens up Radan part files. The second one browses for DXFs. So if we start with looking for Radan part files, as you notice, it's going to jump right to where we were previously. So if you've done this before, it's going to jump into that customer folder where your parts are. And that's great because now I can browse around. Perhaps I'm trying to fulfill some order requirements off of paper, and I can then just pick and choose which ones I need, and then I click on open, and now it brings them into this pop-up window. Now here we need to add in some additional information. Now the fun part about it being a Radan part file is we've already ran these parts. So we know that the material type and thickness. We could also potentially know the strategy. If you have a laser, that's going to be pretty common. We would have the gas type included in those three things to kind of really propel how we're going to line this up with some sheets. But the main thing is we need to put the quantity. So I back to my sheets. Yep, I need to have 10 of these. We did enter. I need to have 60 of those perhaps and enter. And as you can kind of see, we're just doing manual input, putting in the values of the part quantities as we kind of carry through. Also, since this is coming from a Radan part file, and there's a good chance that we ran this before, the nesting orientations are probably already stored, how we want, if it's available for common line cutting or the priority of the parts. All of these things kind of just have been available to us before we've made those selections, and now we're just reusing that part. I'm just going to say that we also need to have maybe back to 10 and then just click OK. Each one of these parts will give us that prompt until we work through that list. Okay, so I've satisfied my need. I've got my work orders that I'm working off of. I'm punching in the data, creating a list of parts I need to run in this today's project. Now the other method is DXFs. So if we click on that, we get another pop-up window. Again, we can select we can do a mass import, but both of these have that limitation where it's to a single file location. If I had, I'm prompted into this stored location from where I was last, but maybe I also have to do customer B and customer F, customer X. So I'd have to browse to each of those folders depending upon how I'm keeping that list on my company network. If it's all just dumped into one great big folder, then it's pretty easily you can go find it, right? Because I can search in this window. I can just type in and it'll, prompt me down. I don't have anything like that name. That was a stupid thing to do. But if I do profile, I can find that. It's going to jump me to where that is in my list. Again, I'm just going to do a big selection here. Now, the difference between Radan part files and DXFs already is we have this box. And so we're seeing all of the parts that we're trying to import all at once instead of that individual pop up where we're just basically indicating the amount that we need. Here, we have access to all of this that we're trying to import because we're really converting these DXFs into Radan part files. And by allowing us to see all of them, there's all of my parts. I can introduce quantity, that's new. So I can then reselect them all. I can go to the multiplier and say I need 15. That'll apply to all of them. Or I could select them individually and just right click in that window, or sorry, left click in that window and say I need 35 of that one. We also, if we select them all, we can then change the material. So I'm going to make these CRS 060 to kind of match what I have in my parts list. Again, you would do this from your sheets, right? So if it was different materials, that's fine. Radan can certainly handle that. But in today's example, all of our materials are going to be the same. We could then again select individually or the mass list and tell it the orientations of how it can be nested, if it's available for command line cutting. But notice in here, we're going to export these out into a folder because we're converting these from a DXF into a Radan part file. All the nesters run off of a Radan part file. So when I'm finished making all of my adjustments, I will say import all. It's going to go find all those parts, convert them from a DXF using my 2D CAD import options, saving them into that location, and also populating it into my nest schedule in my project. So, kind of a longer discussion, but that kind of gives us the basis of everything else that we're going to do today. Radan part files and DXFs, how we can import them in. This is going to be the slowest route. From there, we would nest it. And here I'm just going to do a really quick example of what we have inside the multi-part nester. Underneath there is this options clear at the back called automation. At the moment, I don't have anything active. So when I run the nester, all it's going to do is just part layout, which is fine. Perhaps is if you're new, maybe that's all farther that you want it to go. If you've been doing this for 10 years, maybe it's time to take a look at next steps, right? The next level of automation, especially if you're doing just the carry through. And what I mean by that is as soon as this is finished nesting, I'll kind of explain that a little bit further. Okay, so now that it's finished nesting, we'll click OK here. And it brings out the last part that it's done. But if we go back up here to the first nest, notice if I go to profiling, and if I zoom in on my parts, there's no tool path applied to this. And I'm working on a laser today. So if you're working on punch, this would be pretty obvious also that there's no tools associated with my parts. And that's kind of where what we asked the nester to do. Under the multi-part nest settings, under automation, we have nothing selected. Clicking those, whoops, let me just open that back up. Clicking these boxes, so if I want to do tooling, sheets, scrap cutting, and offcuts, so this is tooling, that's offcuts and scrap cuts. Order is that tab, compiling is compile. So now if I say I want to do this, essentially what it's going to do, if we go back to the nest, I'm just going to delete a couple of these just to show the effect here now. If I rerun the nester now, see all my parts of those nests that I deleted go back. That's the beauty of working in a project. If you didn't know, it's always part driven. So if you have part need, you can run the nester. If you exceed the limit of the part request, the nester is finished. But now when I run the nester, it's going to go modify, which is where all these nests sit at the moment, just with the part layout. It's going to do profiling, which is adding the tool path. It's going to do order, which is going to do the sequence of how it's going to cut. And it's going to compile the code, saving it to where the machine can retrieve it. So now if I just simply click on run the nester, those nests that I deleted will come back with a green icon. indicating that it's completed that whole pie chart, right? It's got all of those four things done. Once again, it's part layout, part tooling, part sequence, and compiling. And as long as I give it a place where I can save the code where the machine can retrieve it, that quickly I've just nested and now I can go run the machine. And that's where we're going to kind of sit through the rest of today's discussion. Full automation. Full automation sometimes is a bit daunting because you really need to know at some level what's happening behind the automation in case something does go awry, like a setting gets changed or a button gets pushed, and now your expectation of what should have happened doesn't happen. So being able to go back and fixing that, you need to have understand what's happening to be able to do that. So be cautious when you're turning on automation, but also embrace it because it does speed things up immensely by not having to touch everything. Once you trust that what you have set up will work for you. All right. So we're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to delete all the nests. There again, the beauty of that, all the parts go back to the part need. I'm also going to get rid of all of my parts. And we're going to just for 1 second talk about 3D. Not everyone will have access to this, and some people may do this in a different way. I'm using Radan 3D to be able to do this, and I'm just going to browse to a real simple assembly. I'm just doing this just as a quick demonstration. So I've got a 3D model assembly, all of my parts drawn, noting them as sheet metal. This does not work if they're drawn as solids. But from there, I can simply just come up here to this unfold, and it's going to basically open up a request to create a new project. So this might be a bit messy because I didn't save my project to begin with. I'm just going to go open. Yeah, so it's got my parts in there from before, but that's okay. You guys will see how this works. But see how when we work with 3D models, what's the fun with this is now it knows the parts quantity. It also knows the material and thickness coming from that 3D model. So that just already speeds things up because I don't have to do anything with these except for potentially say, yep, I need to have, I don't know, a whole bunch, 20 of them. Apply that, all my part quantities change and simply just import. Same import process, all of these coming from, they've already been unfolded. I guess I could have shown that in this the thumbnails. They're unfolded and now they're being imported into my list. They should be down here at the bottom. There they are. So my O60s kind of starts from there. This is that new group that just kind of came in. So notice it recognized, the material type's all the same, but there was three different thicknesses within that model. Radan does a great job at being able to successfully import those into your Radan project. So there's the next first tip, I guess, going beyond just the traditional how Radan can import Radan part files and importing in DXFs. You can also draw parts in a software that comes standard. I don't think that's necessary to have to cover today. If that's of interest, please reach out to support and they can assist you with that. But let's move on to what's next. Well, let's get rid of all of our parts again. And now we're going to step into the world of MRP Essentials. So that is a plugin. It's an additional add-on into Radan. So many of you may not have that. Hopefully, you have at least looked into this. So before we kind of jump into that, I'll just open this up to the configuration settings because this is where it all starts. Is you would have to have some way where you're getting delivered to you your part need electronically, and maybe that happens already, and then you take it from there and then you look at it and then you manually import it into the software if that's where you are right now. If you're getting that information on a delimited file, most commonly that's going to be like a CSV file coming out of your ERP or MRP systems in some sort of spreadsheet. We could then take that information and configure MRP Essentials to match your outputs to then have to eliminate that step of you having to investigate what the part needs are, part quantities, etc. It's just a fast way to be able to get parts in. MRP Essential does way more than that, but that's kind of where it was born. Was how can I skip the step of another person doing manual entry. All right, so let's go ahead and close that. Back up to MRP Essentials, Import Manager this time. Select a bill of materials. I'm just going to click on Tuesdays. Select, finds all my parts, and I'm going to bring it into my list. But the neat thing is, see now it's got the material, the thickness, and the quantity. And I have two options. I can add or I can create a new project. And we're going to do both, but first one we're going to do is just add. So we click on add, it's going to go out, find all of my parts, and load that into the project that I'm working in. Click OK, and there's my parts. And that's all the farther that it went. Simply just brought in a list of parts. Now, the reason why I would have done add is perhaps I've already got a project I'm cooking on, right? And I've got a whole bunch of nests over here. And maybe that last nest just doesn't have the optimization that I'm looking for. So I can delete that nest. Now I've got some additional parts I can re-nest with these parts included, and I can hopefully have some better outcomes with that last little chunk of nest that I had left. Alternatively, if we get rid of all of this and we'll say, yes, I'm going to save this project just so that it doesn't open up and have stuff in it. And then I'm going to go back into MRP Essentials, Import Manager once again, select my bill of materials. We'll pick that same Tuesday list, select, find my parts, and this time I'm going to go to New. Now watch what happens when I do New. It's going to take, well, it says, okay, I've done this already, so yeah, I want to override it. It might take just slightly longer, but when I come out of this, there'll be this option here it's doing right now, running my automation. So whatever I have selected in my project for level of automation that I want to do, that's what's going to happen once it brings these parts in. This only happens when I do a new project. If you do add, like I said before, it just adds it into the project. But now when I click OK, everything is done, right? It not only brought the parts in, it also did the nesting and my level of automation, if you recall, we have it set to do all four of those buttons there. So it's doing part layout, part tooling, part sequence, and compile, giving me a green ball. So I've got code generated that I can run at my machine instantly, bringing in that parts list right from MRP Essentials. So there's just that another next level, right? So we just keep building and building and building. I'm going to go ahead and remove these guys. I'm going to take all these parts also out of my list, and we're just going to be working with one file now. Again, through MRP Essentials, we're just going to go back to imports. We're going to select, this time I'm going to select this laser all. I'm going to bring in all of these parts into my current project that I'm working in. So we'll just give that a second to go find all those parts and import it into my project. All right, now that we've got a lot of parts, well, actually, let's get a lot of parts. So I'm going to just bring that whole list in one more time. We're trying to have this battle between the traditional nester and the ultimate nester. And in order to do that, we need a lot of parts. And this won't take very long to kind of throw in a whole nother bunch. Now, this probably isn't even enough to make this really kind of showcase what it can do. But I think it's a good starting point. Now from here, I think also to make this speed up, we're going to turn off the automation. Now we've seen what this does and the benefits of having this on. We're going to click OK on that. And the other thing that we're going to do is under the sheets, to make this as fair as we can, I think we'll just make it 5 by 10 sheets. So we're going to exclude all other sheets from the nester as well. So back into the multi-part nester. Under nesting options, this would be the traditional way. And if you have ultimate nester, this optimized batches of nests is probably active like it is on mine. If it's grayed out, this is a licensed product. So if you see something here that's of interest, perhaps give your sales guy a call and we can kind of give you a demonstration of this or maybe even a trial. But we're going to go ahead and run the nester because this is going to take a minute or so to be able to process. So we'll just let it chew for a little bit. Okay, as it's kind of processing this, I'm going to try to explain the difference between traditional and ultimate. Traditional nester is always looking for that sheet utilization. That's its primary focus. And remember when I mentioned the parts, right? We've only got 76 individual parts, so we have 906 total parts. So it might start chewing through and get down to like part number 25. And it's going to say, yeah, that's a great mix of parts. And it give us 84% sheet utilization. So boom, P1 done. Now that's locked and goes on to P2, P3, P4. Now what happens is it may not have gotten to the bottom of the list. Like we've got 76 parts. It might have only gotten down to, like I said, that 25th one. It didn't know that 74 and 75 were really tiny parts, and it could have put it in some of the open air space on sheet one. So we've got 10 nests, all 906 parts are done. And we've got about this much left on our 5x10 sheet. Okay, we're going to delete all of the parts, all the nests, all the parts will go back. That's the beauty of working in a project. We're simply just going to click on the multi-part nester under nesting options, and then we're going to choose optimize batches of nests. Keep in mind that changed from 5 seconds to 45. I'm going to run the nester now. Now, as it's running, we gave it 45 seconds to do it. So if we had multiple materials in this, it would have 45 seconds to be able to process each material. We've only got CRS 060, so it should take approximately 45-ish seconds to be able to do this. And instead of allowing it 5 seconds per nest, it's allowing 45 seconds for the entire run. So unlike when P1 was 84%, I'm like, yeah, that's great, lock it in and done. It's probably found something rather similar to that, but it kept it in memory. So as it processes through the entire list of parts, when we get down to 74 and 75 of those tiny parts that we had, perhaps now it can go back, bring out P1 and nest it to it. Now, as you can see, these are going to populate rather quickly versus that 5 to 6 second delay. Used 10 sheets again, but notice our scrap or the remnant we have is bigger. And now you're going to say, ah, Mike, that's not that much savings, but it would be. Believe me, we've done many time studies or test subjects of this. What we're going to talk about next is back into MRP Essentials. Now, MRP Essentials, like we mentioned before, started as just an importation tool. But if we go into the part manager, we have this option that's called sort and filter. Now, I'm not going to run through some scenarios on this, but we will open this up just so you can kind of see the interface. And basically, if I had a massive import file, and within that file, like we're talking again, a really big one, then I could also then drill it down and sort it out, right? Filter by either, in my case, the fields that I have available to me. I could do the quantity, I could do a customer or machine center. Perhaps in yours, it could be due dates, you start dates, work centers, whatever it is that you have in your file. You choose that, get the data, process it, and it basically chops it up into smaller bites to eat. Then back in MRP Essentials, underneath sheet fill, we have a manager. So then all of those would be populated within this group here. And then let's say if we had our one file that got converted to 6, so now we've got 6 files in this list. And if we're going by due date, perhaps, then we could arrange those due dates by the calendar day, and then we could have them processed. Exactly like what the Ultimate Nester just did, where it's going to only have access to whatever files we gave it, and it's going to nest them up. Then it's going to go to the next file, bring in extra parts, take out. We have a value here that says the utilization that we're trying to meet. So our first nest is 84%, second one's 81. So the 77 would get pulled back out. Now with this new influx of parts to see if any parts would fit in any of these gaps. And if they did, they'd get nested. If they didn't, it'd go back. 73%, it would get pulled. We're trying then to maximize the sheet utilization all the way through. That's another great tool with MRP Essentials. And lastly, with MRP Essentials, there's so much to talk about in here, but we also have a watch service. So you could run this completely lights out, where you're just throwing a CSV file into that watch folder. It's gonna, boom, start running. And then it's gonna do everything that we've been doing today. It's gonna throw parts into the project. It's gonna kick out some nests. It's gonna generate some code. It's gonna save that code to the machine where it can retrieve it. And you don't even have to touch Radan. That's another wonderful trick that MRP Essentials can do. Next up on our list, shop data. Now, in order to do that, I need to be able to change my configuration. So just bear with me for a moment. We'll just close out of this, say no, and then we're gonna change my configuration, and then we're gonna go over to start Radan back up. Let's go. I'm gonna pop Radan back open again after we made that configuration change. Now this time we're going to do things just a little bit differently. We're going to go directly into MRP Essentials. And instead of importing with the CSV this time, we're going to go to Part Manager and we're going to go to ERP Connection. Now this is going to tap into an SQL database, which allows us to be able to pick job orders just like we did with our BOMs. But now we can just select again. And I'm just going to click Process. It goes and grabs all those part files. I'm just going to let it use the project name that it pulled. It's just the date and the time, but that's okay. And we're just going to go new. Now, remember when we click new, it's going to be able to go grab those parts. It's going to throw them into our project, and then it's going to nest them up, and it's going to run our automation options that we have tied to our particular project. So the anticipation here is it's going to do all that, it's going to do all the work, and it's going to be all the way processed through compilation of code. Let's see what it does. All right, so let's click OK. There we have it. We've got our parts in our project list, and we've got all of our nests compiled, ready for running on the machines. Now, since we're talking about shop data here, the next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to come up here to the shop data plugin, and we're going to go export these all into the shop data application. So it's going to be a little bit of a flash here for a moment as it loads all that into shop data. It's been successful. Now we'll just pop open shop data and we'll give this a refresh. And there's all of my new nests that I need to run. Notice they're all on the Amada. And there's a couple of things that we can do on this. The first thing that we want to do probably is we need to export these out to be able to be used in this application. So now we've got the NC exported is true. So I can manipulate these, I can rotate the order, I can change, I can use this as a schedule basically. From there, what I would do is I could then select these parts or nests to be processed. So if I go up here to process nest, here's my layout. All of my parts are kind of yellow to kind of indicate that they haven't been completely processed through. So if I select the nest, if I go here to print labels, that's kind of a neat thing. I can then look at my parts. I can add labels to these on a zebra printer. But if I close this, we'll just disable that for a moment. We could print labels for all of the parts as well. But if I go to print release, what that allows me to do is it's like the guy in the shop now has the ability to say these parts were all complete. So he can easily just release this. Now all the parts go orange, and he can go on to the next nest. So in this case, I'm going to say print release, and I'm going to say, yep, all of these were good except for this one. We had one that was scrapped. Now when I release this, that's going to go back to the part need. But once I do all this, then I can come back and I'm like, okay, yep, this has all been processed and true and done. But let's say I have a bit of a jam up on my Amada and I want to move it to another one of my machines. If I right click on this, you can see I can also do move to, we'll say Cincinnati. It gives me this message saying, hey, you haven't processed this yet for NT code. So oh, okay, yep, you're right. So we'll minimize this, go back into Radan. And here, we're just going to come up here to configure, change machine tool, and I'm going to switch over to the Cincinnati machine. And then I've got a nice easy button where I can do this finish all nests. I've got all of my nests, and as long as my capacity is the same, click on this button, I'll say yes. Level of automation I want to do is everything, click OK, and it's going to just go ting, 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 add all of the things that we didn't have. It's going to process retooling, sequencing, and compile. Once that's done, then we'll export this back out into our shop data. Go with the shop data, export all the data. Just going to do a little bit of a flashbang again. See how easy this is? And now this will be available in our shop data interface, through which the shop can use as well as the office. And now we can use this basically as a scheduler. So I can then right click on this. I can move this to the Cincinnati. Oops, I didn't want to move all of them. So that was my bad. I'm just going to select one and I move that back to the Amata. So from here, like I said, it can become a scheduler. I can then we'll right click all these for the Cincinnati, export the nests. So now we've got NC code, process the nests, grab this one that we're going to process on the Cincinnati, print, release out all that's finished and done, and we'll come back to the manage the nest. So see how this is green now? That one's been done and completed, and then I can then clear the release and I can only just see things that I have available. So this is going to be a great tool to be able to maintain that connection that we have with the office. Office in there making a nest all the day, they're kicking out the work, shop floors doing the work, kicking back the results back into the office. Wow, I'm looking a bit rough. But I've had a lot of fun, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I think we went a little bit over on time, so I don't think we have a lot of time for questions. I'll give you back over to Jake, and he can kind of get us out of here. But thank you so much for joining this webinar today. If you have any questions, please put them in the question box. I'm sure we'll get to them. Reach out to your sales guys. If you guys are current customers and if you are thinking of doing some things or if you're stuck, reach out to support. This has been Mike with Radan, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks so much.